And join me on stage, please. Thank you. Great. Please join me. Welcome back. Moving swiftly on into the kind of middle of the last day. Looking inwardly now at the role of AI within financial services, we've got a really tremendous panel with us this morning, banks and fintechs. Delighted to have somebody that's sort of running AI strategy globally for Citibank, based out of Europe. So we'll have the conversation, but please, as always, make sure that you ask questions. This is your session as much as it's ours. We'll come to you sort of midway through the session and then again at the end, so please have some questions ready. I guess we should start really with you, Prag. I mean, you have a big global job. Tell us a little bit about what you do, but also tell us your kind of view from a financial, a large FI perspective on where how the bank is thinking about AI and where you think it might go, I guess, at this point.
Thanks a million for having me. My name is Prag Sharma. I lead Citi's Artificial Intelligence Center of Excellence. Just like everybody else, we're thinking long and hard about AI, and by that I mean at the senior most level in the organization, which is a change from before. Because before, as we all know, AI and different types of AI, machine learning, different types of machine... Hello, yeah, this is better. Sorry. As you all know, machine learning and AI has existed for a while. It has been making gains within large organizations, including the banking services. But what's different now is that senior management is interested in the technology and how to apply it. The reason senior management is interested in the technology and how to apply it is because it has come to be a foundational technology. The idea is it can be used for many, many different use cases. So as a number or figure to take away, and I've said this a number of times in other conferences as well, so far 80% of our data, which is unstructured data, was out of bounds for computers to do anything with well. Okay, just think of that number. 80% of our data, computers couldn't do too many things with it because it was unstructured. It was email, it was voice, it was video. Natural language processing has existed for a while. You could do some things with it. You could not do a lot with it. All of a sudden, when some of these tools became available to the general public, this has been going, generative AI has been around for 3-4 years maybe, but when the tools became available to the general public, that is when we all realized that they can do much more, including address 80% of your data. So this is how we're thinking long and hard about it. There are many use cases at hand, and we can go into details, but I'll let others comment.
Thank you very much, Prag. Let's also stick with the banks first, and then we'll come to you as the sole innovator to single you out a little bit. Oliver, tell us a little bit, Commercial Bank of Dubai, quite an established, fairly long-standing institution in the region, in the Emirates. How are you thinking about advanced technologies? Presumably, and Ray will come onto this also. Presumably, you're sort of fairly early in the stages of seeing how deep technology such as AI and ML can impact the business.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone. My name is Ali Imran. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Commercial Bank of Dubai. Just for everybody's reference. Okay, a little bit more closer. Okay. Now you can hear me. Just like Prag mentioned, emerging technology has always been of our interest. We've been, as an institution, have been investing very heavily into our channels transformation. I think we set up our AI COE a little bit while back, but that was more focused on machine learning and into some specific areas like financial crime compliance and more operational efficiency led. What we see in the last 3 to 6 months with the conversational AI/LLM models being more and more available and an enterprise-grade solutions being available for access to the institutions in emerging markets, we see a transition happening, moving to more on the front end of the storyboard, which is related to customer servicing, client acquisition, and so on and so forth. What I call essentially above the glass conversation, not underneath the glass. And I think that's an area which I'm personally most excited about. I studied AI and ML 25 years back in the shame of fuzzy logic. The world has clearly moved on from there. To whatever understanding we have today, we are also trying to think very hard and long and putting up a not a long-term strategy because we believe the technology evolution is happening so rapidly. You need to have a game plan for the next 6 to 12 months at best and ready to pivot, actually. So not to get overly detached with the technology. I'm more excited about the use case coming out of it and the business propositions.
I mean, Ray is sort of cutting across data, analytics, and operations. I mean, where is Emirates NBD going?
Great. So thanks for the invite. So my name is Ray Richardson, and I'm the CDAO of Emirates NBD. We started our journey, I guess, in a very focused way about 2 years ago. So we set up our COE, and it was at the back of a multi-year IT transformation. So a lot of effort went into breaking down the data landscape, a single data lake, cleaning up our data. So we said we were in good shape actually to get this whole thing going. And over the last 18 months or so, we built up a pretty impressive, I think, from a standing start, an impressive catalog of use cases, many of which are in production. Now, what's kind of interesting, and everybody's talked about this so far, is GenAI. So GenAI really, people tend to forget, only came out at the beginning of this year. And suddenly, we're looking at all of the things we have in place in terms of data quality standards, in terms of guardrails for our use cases, in terms of mechanisms to measure value impact for our use cases. And we're looking at these and saying, how does that apply to GenAI? Okay? Because data quality is different for structured data than unstructured data. The types of guardrails you need for GenAI are entirely different. And actually measuring impact with GenAI is also quite different. I will just add that it's been a bit of a, from us, because we're pushing use cases from the center out, okay, trying to get this momentum going. And one of the things we did over the summer is we said, look, we'll run a hackathon, a GenAI hackathon with ChatGPT. And we didn't have really, really big expectations. But I remember there was something like, we had about 100 people at it. We had about 24, 25 teams over 2 days. And I remember thinking, look, this could be a complete train wreck. It wasn't. It was phenomenal. The number of people, and these are, hard-nosed bankers who've been in banking for many, many years saying, I know my job, I know how to do my job, there's no way you can improve my job. And they're standing on stage looking at what GenAI can do for credit decisioning, for hiring, for all sorts of different use cases. And it created this massive pull, basically, across the organization insofar as, why aren't we doing much more of this? And at the end of the hackathon, and it was only over 2 days, we had all these minor, very, very small MVPs. And I remember the CEO looking at me saying, okay, so you could do that in 2 days. So I guess these will all be in production now in a matter of weeks, Ray. And of course, the reality is actually we don't really know what it takes to bring these things into production, what all the safety concerns around this.
Just a quick one, are you using or have you used, or is there a ban like many companies on the use of ChatGPT for business for within the business?
So there is a ban, as in you can't access it directly, but we've been using Copilot for development purposes, so we've got a very good relationship with Microsoft, so it gives us access to all of their technology. We're right now just beginning a pilot with M365, basically, and seeing its use. But again, there's a lot of concerns, how do we control this, how do we limit it, and what are the guardrails and the principles by which we need to work with this? So it's a big concern.
Thank you very much for that, Ray. Mustafa, I'm going to come to you with a slightly different question, obviously coming from a different end of the marketplace. Last year, a point was made earlier in the week that last year at this event, GITEX as a whole, the talk was Web3 and Metaverse. This year, we've had ChatGPT in the meantime, and now it's AI. The challenge, of course, is that technology gets viewed in silos, doesn't it? In the case of fintech companies, you don't really think of technology in a silo. Ray was talking about use cases pushed from the center out. You've already done the hard bit. You know the use case. Technology is just an enabler of that. So how are you viewing AI? Are you viewing it in the as a kind of additional kind of thing that you plug in, or is it just another part of the workflow that as you grow and as you get more efficient, you'll be able to enable?
So first of all, thanks for having me, Simon and gentlemen. So when it comes to the AI, basically the way that we look at it, it's not something that was just built last year or the year before. As Ali mentioned and the gentleman, like this has been built for at least like since the 1970s, and some white papers that have been formulated since then. But we actually underestimated the power of the AI. The way that we look at it, like based on what happened throughout the last year and this year, definitely the growth and the amount of revolution that this can unlock in terms of use cases is humongous. It's beyond our imagination even. So definitely there is a lot of potential when it comes to the fintech on that. And what's really differs at this moment is that the amount or the rate of change of growth. Usually when we speak about the fintech or the digital revolution of the payments in general, like most people would agree that there are kind of 4 stages. So the first stages has to do with forming the central banks in general and thus the issuer banks and so forth. And then there is the introduction of the card payments into the scheme. And then third, there is the fintech, and follows that there is the crypto. And then fourth, what I personally expect is that in this 4th stage, this is where it comes really the implementation of the AI and the machine learning to an extent that we never imagined before. Like if we analyze the last decade, it was already implemented in the JP Morgan and the algorithmic trading, for example, and in the microfinance when it comes to the credit scoring, when it comes to the fraud detection. So all of these kind of use cases are very interesting, yet if we compare it with what will happen in the future, it's as if comparing, for example, the automatic parking of the car with autonomous driving. There is lots of potential that will come, yet we need to be very attentive and we need to be very flexible in order to be ahead of the curve, in order to cope up with this wave.
We've had a lot of talk about technology, I think, and also I think one can see the direction of travel at the level of financial services globally. It's going to be more decentralized. It's going to be increasingly cashless, although cash will still have a place and a role. There'll be fewer banks, although banks will also be around, albeit perhaps at a different level, perhaps more in the background as utilities. Do you have a view on, you've just mentioned there the kind of comparison between cards and driverless cars. Is it clear, in your mind as to where AI will take payments and financial services? Will we be operating in a fully automated payment world at some point?
I think like the way that they started to regulate the autonomous driving, whereas they dissected it into 5 levels, whereas the 5th level is the most autonomous kind of driving experience where there is no need for a real driver and a steering wheel or so. Likewise, in the fintech or in the financial sector, this can be categorized into several sectors or several levels. I would consider ourselves like in the 1st level in terms of the market, because again, like ultimately, imagine that you would have the financial advisor of yourself, whereas you would have certain assets, and that financial advisor, that automated financial advisor would be able to take autonomously the decisions of what would be the best ways to invest your money, whether in the real estate, whether in the crypto, whether in whichever sort of assets that exist. Definitely, there is some kind of pros and cons as well into that. That's why we need to build things in a responsible way as well, because there are 2 sides of each and everything.
Thank you very much for that, Mostafa. Prag, let's come back to you. Those use cases that you were kind of referring to at the beginning. AI is just an enabler, isn't it? I mean, it's not a business line in its own right. Or do you think, or is the bank, your bank, thinking about the way that it perhaps could be an enabler, perhaps around wealth or asset management or investments and investment decisioning?
Yeah, where we started off with this is today it's a productivity multiplier. So that's where the technology is at. And I think some of my colleagues here were mentioning the reason it's a productivity multiplier is there are still quite a few risks with it that we need to iron out before we can scale out quickly. So that's still quite a reality. So from a productivity multiplier stage, there are huge gains to be had. Citi is in over 160 countries. We have 240,000 people. So where you have large resources and a lot of people, you could enable them with this technology to achieve more. So every year we have budget constraints, for example, like any organization. We have to pick and choose the best projects. I think in this case, if done correctly, and this is a big piece here, it's not easily done. You know, it's not a matter of taking an API, integrating it, and you will get all the gains. You will get some gains, but to get all the gains, I think you need to change your existing processes to suit the technology at hand. And that is a multi-year process. This is why it will overall take a little bit more time for the use cases. Yesterday I was at a panel and they were talking about, is it going to be a destroyer or a savior? And my answer was neither. It is going to be somewhere in the middle. So for the use cases, productivity gains now, which is developer productivity, the idea that you have many, many developers. You just mentioned GitHub Copilot. It is an excellent use case. The reason is many organizations already have many risks and control processes in place for production development. We cannot put anything into production without making sure that we have thoroughly vetted it. $4 trillion flow through Citi systems, so you can't put anything in a Citi system without it. So developer productivity is key. There is huge gains to be had. That's the first use case. The other is search and retrieval. 80% of the data, like I mentioned, we are searching for it every day in our emails, our document stores, external data, points of views, summarization, categorization, translation, comparison, generation of documents can be done faster now. So if you took half a day to have a point of view, you could maybe have half an hour. So those are the two. Now, in terms of a new business line, you need to play around with these use cases first before rushing into a new business line. It is coming. These technologies are getting better, but get your hands dirty first. In each of the use cases that I mentioned, there are problems today. As an example, developer productivity, you and I are mentioning. Actually, it's good for some languages that are available. We found that, or recent research showed that if the languages are not that common in the training set, then actually there's only a 10% boost or productivity gain, meaning they're not that good for those languages. So you may need to build smaller models that are focused on that. There's a lot of learnings to be had, but there is definitely, like everyone is saying here, I think it's time to get stuck in, get your hands dirty, because what you hear is not exactly going to be right for your organization or even the data you have.
Thanks for that, Prag. Just a quick follow-up on that. You know, at the beginning of the week, we had one of the head of technology at the Sovereign Wealth Fund in Dubai made a sort of rather dramatic statement that AI is going to sort of destroy jobs across financial services. It's that's overblown, isn't it? I mean, the reality is like many technology leaps, we don't know that. We can't say for certain, but the chances are that it will create jobs in new fields that we haven't even imagined.
I think that destroying jobs is a wrong way to look at it for many, many reasons. If you look back, nothing has destroyed jobs. Jobs have changed over time always, okay? My role did not exist a couple of years ago. It might not in a couple of years' time, who knows? But it doesn't exist, hasn't existed a couple of years ago, which is a survey done showed 65% of the jobs in the US in the 80s didn't exist. The new ones. So we shouldn't fear. The problem isn't that jobs are changing. So as an example, prompt engineering is the new either snake oil or an actual skill to have. I don't know yet. We're trying to figure it out. But it could be the new job. The point is the jobs are changing. How fast they're changing is the issue. If AI takes over tomorrow in certain jobs, such as an analyst, so if you have lots of analysts that do market research for you, and now you can form that point of view much quicker, do you need 20 analysts? Often quoted are law, for example, the area of law. If you bill by the hour, can you still bill by the hour if the basic research is quicker? Okay. In the wealth page that you mentioned, this is very much a foundation technology. Many of the activities that you do for your wealth partners, including providing them with basic research, providing them with insights, providing them with new ways to interact with you. So we very much focus on text here, but audio, video, this is all being enhanced with generative AI. So think of those new mediums and how you can connect with your wealth partners. In all of these spaces, incremental gains over the long term are going to multiply to form new products and services. But right now, focus on the incremental gains would be my view.
Thanks for that. Just quickly, Mostafa.
If I may add as well to the discussion here that Ali triggered. So basically, I've just read an article saying that when it comes to the implementation of the ChatGPT, it almost increases the productivity by 24%, around 14% on the bottom line, and maybe 9 to 10% on the top line. So definitely that's a major breakthrough, because there are lots of performance and optimization perspective that can be done. Yet at the same time, we shouldn't think about it as a job threatening to all of us, because at the end of the day, it's we all live in a very dynamic world, right? And the amount of change rate of the jobs, like, it differed from the last decade to this decade and this year. So we need to be dynamic, and we need to kind of learn new things in order to cope with the reality. Like, for example, the ChatGPT prompt engineer and these sort of new jobs that have been created as well.
Ali, perhaps come to you. I mean, it does seem to be that, AI is fraught with risks, isn't it? I mean, it's, talking here from Prague there, get your hands dirty. That's not something that a banker really wants to be associated with, that kind of level of experimentation. You've also got, in markets like in the Middle East, perhaps less so in the UAE, where there's full employment, but in certain other growing regions, taking the possible threat of removing jobs from the economy is also not a great thing for the bank to be advocating. So tell us about some of the challenges and how you're kind of addressing those or thinking about them.
My view is that actually, I don't think jobs will get destroyed. That's my view. However, I think conversational AI also will be the biggest tool to digitally upskill and reskill these people as well. Because to me, education tech and using a conversational or generative AI tooling to upskill your set of employees is also going to be a crucial part of this. To me, personally, I think what we have taken as a view as an institution, and as my personal view as well, is I think AI at core is the key. And when I say AI at core, I'm not talking about core technology. I think at the core of organization. Now, it plays on multiple levels. One, the people aspect. I also think before the end of this decade, we will see a significant change in the organization structures and the operating model of the banks. Because banks are still set up in the 60s and 50s kind of an era, highly pyramidized, typically run by a geographic or a revenue center, and they are cutting. I mean, like today we hire the most experienced and the most successful individual. Tomorrow, or 5 years from today, we need a core competency of data and analytics to be the most precious competency, not necessarily if you have a 27 years of a credit underwriting experience. Because for that, I will be able to get a multiplier effect on the back of this evolving technology. I think this is something we really need to think very hard as an industry. And again, the institutions who will anticipate this thing and build a capability in terms of the talent pool will be eventually the winner. Because one way or another, if the conventional banks or the traditional banks are not going to move on this, again, we have seen it in the last decade or so, the most hard-hit area is payments by the fintech, because that was a highly commoditized business seen by the banks, and moving money was taken as a granted. And you see that was the most disrupted area for the financial services by the incumbent. I think that exactly is going to be the challenge for the banks, that we will be challenged by alternate players, because they will be able to, these will be born digital and born in an era as an organization of an AI and tooling. I think risks are there. Again, bankers are not paid to be innovative. They're paid to be compliant, by and large. Okay, nobody has lost a job by complying to central bank directives. Some people have when they do not comply. I think experimentation doesn't come naturally to banks. That's given. I think this is, again, an area, in my view, where most of the banks are moving out of the comfort zone, because now the leadership and even the boards do understand the evolving nature. And I think, to be fair, I think Dubai and UAE in general is at the heart of this change. Like, this country appointed a minister of AI much before all this hype. Yes. And as an institutional, Dubai and wider UAE believes in this transformative technologies to be undertaken at the forefront. I'm very positive that the change actually will emit in this region in financial services actually much faster than the many other countries we will see on adoption.
Thank you very much for that, Ali. Ray, perhaps we could turn to you a little bit. Use cases at the one level, challenges at the other. For some of those use cases, are you thinking from a kind of proprietary standpoint? We build and we keep everything in house, or are you looking at partnerships and thinking how we might plug in innovators that have got automation that we can use, and then we'll work out the workflows through the business.
So far we made an intentional decision at the beginning that we would roll our own, okay? And there was a number of different reasons for that, because we're a bank, okay? So our technology stack is set up for banking, okay? Which means that if you bring in a particular vendor, they're going to be better than what we have right now, okay? And we actually don't know whether that vendor technology will work particularly well with our particular setup, okay? So one of the things we needed to establish early on was a baseline, okay? So a baseline whereby we could actually stand up, let's say, 40, 50 models, productionize them reasonably quickly, and understand actually where the bottlenecks are. At that point, you can begin to open up and actually allow vendors to come in, understand what their offering is, and then at least you're able to make an informed decision to say, okay, you're bringing us in a direction we want to go as opposed to a direction your product roadmap is on, basically. So this is one of our decisions around that. Now, it's still very clear to us, though, that we're not going to be able to get to where we want to get to by doing it all ourselves, okay? So we're going to have to partner. We're going to have to partner with fintechs on the data side, on the technology side, on the service side. And again, we're beginning to open up on that space. But again, what's really important is that you've got to have a clear view in your own mind where you want to go. So what's your ambition? What's your risk appetite around data and AI? Are you going to be one of these banks that's willing to actually be at the forefront? Do you want to go right down the path of hyper-personalization and everything that involves, or do you want to be a laggard in this whole thing? Because actually, your positioning around that really informs, what sort of technology you're going to need in place, what sort of partnerships you're going to need to have around you, and also what sort of basic things like customer consent. Building in the guardrails for the data that you have, understanding that you've thought about, let's say, all the regulations, not the regulations that are there today, but the regulations that are coming down the path, because one of the things about this region, at least, is that it's comparatively benign, okay, in terms of a regulatory standpoint. That allows us to actually do things that are much more difficult to do in Europe. But the direction of travel for regulation is only one way. So if we look at GDPR, and if you read into GDPR, the types of things it asks you to do, so that any processing of your data with AI, you need to at least log that, and you need to have some risk assessment about that. We don't have that right now in CPR that we have here, but if it goes in that direction whereby we have to, let's say, deal with data erasure requests, deal with revoking of consent, when you've actually baked your data into your AI models, how do you do that? And honestly, these are the things we're thinking about today, so that we don't need to think about it when it actually becomes a reality, and we've got, I don't know, an estate of several hundred models basically baked, with data baked in over many, many years. And at that point, we're asking, wow, I wonder how we unwind that. So they're the things we're challenged with.
Thanks for that, Ray. I mean, I think you raise valid points. Capabilities on the one hand. It's challenging to build up those capabilities, and of course the regulation in itself is also in sort of free form, particularly and evolving in this region. I mean, obviously, those of you who know that the AI Act is going through the European Parliament. There's a lot of debate around that anyway. It won't be law for another 2 years, and in the meantime, it's a shape-shifting piece of potential legislation. We've got a couple of minutes left, so I think let's try and get a question or two if we do have any questions from the audience. Anybody? No? So good, more for us. Yes, right, yes, exactly. Yeah, well, it's too early for the audience to ask about AI, maybe. Let's close off, I guess, then, really, with a kind of final piece, which is, where do you think, a year from now, where are we going to be? Are we going to see any kind of delightful experiences enabled by AI, or is it simply more a question of more dull operational efficiencies that the customer doesn't really notice, and unless it goes wrong, more chatbots? Where do you think we're going to see any kind of real leaps forward over the next year, or is it just too early?
Again, yeah, I'll start with that and see. So if we were having this conversation 6 months ago, have been talking about something else altogether. Okay, generative AI wouldn't have been a piece. So it's sort of a fool's errand to think, oh, in a year's time we're going to do that. But you're right, and you've answered your question as well by saying, listen, a lot of the I like to call it boring AI. A lot of the boring AI, boring as in standard
Nuts and bolts stuff.
Yeah, nuts and bolts stuff. All of that is going to get accelerated over the next year, and that really should be the focus. In financial services, the foundations of what we do, chatbots, I mean, these things can improve tremendously if done correctly, and we should really focus on that. So that's really the year ahead. In the longer term, sure, it's anyone's guess. What I'd like to see maybe away from financial services, or more generally, the really cool part is this technology can be used for many bigger problems, such as environmental concerns or otherwise. That would be a nice place. It can be used to help humans, maybe if you're partially impaired and can't see properly. There's lots of technologies coming that will help humans do better. Exoskeletons that help you pick up things or otherwise. There's a lot going on in that space. And what's really cool is robotics hasn't caught up with the software development in AI. So what I mean by that is we're very much stuck to our computer. We're very much talking to our computers, phones, laptops, and other things. But as robotics gets better, and we start to put large language models and similar technologies into robotics, you will see a wow factor emerging. But we still have a bit to go in the robotic side. So plenty of excitement, some boring sort of stuff that will keep going, but a lot of excitement if things are done correctly. That's from my view.
Thank you for that, Prag. Mustafa, let's turn to you. I mean, Ray was saying you've got, they're sort of thinking about it strategically. Do they want to be, do you want to be a leader in the space, or do you just want to kind of plug it in over time and kind of see what happens? I guess. Prag, there talking about the kind of thinking about it from the kind of a boring point of view. Are you excited about AI? Where do you kind of see? Do you think it's an enabler for you to become a leader? What's your view?
Yeah, actually, there is a short-term solution or the short-term answer and a long-term answer into that. So for the short-term answer is to see how can there be a rigorous implementations of such technology to help us from one side, like reduce the costs, and from the other side, like help the merchants, which are our clients, basically take the best decisions based on the machine learning technology that is there. For example, through some kind of recommendation engines and through some models like logistic regressions and linear regressions in order to kind of take the best decisions for that. For the long-term solution or the long-term answer, consider the following, that you're working and then you go back home and then suddenly you find all of the groceries that you wanted are already there and are already ordered. And likewise as well, from an investment perspective, like imagine that that financial advisor took the decision that he will buy, for example, a certain type of asset or a certain apartment for the best ROI that is given. So for the long-term kind of solution into that, there would be some kind of automation on each and every aspect into the financial advisory role.
Thank you very much for that, Mustafa. Ali, and then we'll come to you, Ray, for a final word. Your centre of excellence, the capabilities you were talking about, where will you be in a year's time from now? How sort of far down the bank's AI journey or sort of operational efficiency journey, if that's what it really is, will you be?
I think in short to medium term, when I say horizon one, next 12 to 24 months will be focused on efficiency and, again, productivity multiplier, what I say. It could be in front office, could be in back office, but it's all about multiplier effect. I also believe that before, again, the end of this decade, coupled with the quantum computing, if it comes before that, I think that will be forcing a sector like us to be really on a back foot, given the amount of bad actors which can act. So I think the cybersecurity and the whole posture around that will be a big challenge. And that will be, again, we haven't thought about it yet, but to me, there's a lot of actors in the ecosystem which can also ultimately puts us on a back foot as well. At the moment, it's all about excitement, looking at new positive side of the story. I think there will be inevitably an incident or two which will put us all into a defensive mode as well, and then also spend a lot of time on risk management side of the story as well. That's my view. But again, to me, I personally feel that even in short to medium term, I see that if we can evolve to GPT-4 or 5 and we get the reasoning out of these LLM models to an extent, I feel what just mentioned also that advisory services, if not autonomous, at least assisted, would be something we see in actually next 24 months possible.
Very much. Ray, just a final word from you. A year from now, you're also getting the talent. I mean, we talk a lot about capabilities. That kind of means that you also need the right kinds of people. Where will we be in a year's time for the bank?
So I do think a gap is going to emerge. Okay, so you're going to have a kind of a two-speed financial services economy, and the ones that actually will really invest in this, the ones are well positioned, and they're well positioned because they can invest, they can maybe build their own large language models, they're in an area that's got a single regulation that's relatively benign. That's going to allow them to experiment much more. Our focus, well, at least, it's not going to be on efficiency. If you look at our bank, our cost-to-income ratio is very low. So it's got to be on hyper-personalization. It's got to be on trying to reach out to the clients, and it's always going to be human in the loop. So if you think about wealth, for instance, what we're hoping is that with wealth, we're going to be able to reach a much larger base of customers with the same sort of service, basically. So it's sort of wealth to the masses, and that will really grow the top line. So it's less about decreasing the bottom line and more about growing the top line. Now I do have a genuine concern though, because banks have this, banks are trusted. Okay, so let's say we're super successful, and we've got these really cool hyper-personalized offers going out to our customers. A percentage of them will say, initially, that's fantastic, that's exactly what I want, that's really speaking my language. But in time, what will happen, people will say, well, what exactly do you know about me? And how are you using my data? And data privacy and protection will become an issue and a question. And even if a small percentage of those people come back and say, okay, I want you to stop doing that, I want you to stop using my data for that, and this then becomes a challenge for banks, and the positioning of banks more generally. So, look, I don't think we have a choice. We have to go all in, but there are lots of gotchas in it. Yeah.
Very good, gentlemen. Please give them a warm thanks. There you have it. AI, great enabler. It's going to enable a leap forward, but it is going to take time, and there's a long way to go. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.